Hey everyone, Brother Anthony here, and we're going to be diving into a powerful story from the Bible today.
I'm Sister Clara, and I am too.
The story of Jesus and the Canaanite woman.
It's a really fascinating one.
It really is, and
Yeah.
it often leaves people kind of scratching their heads a little bit.
I can see why.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Because it doesn't seem like the Jesus that we think we know.
Yeah, at first glance, it's like, what's going on here?
So the question that we're going to try to unpack together is, why did Jesus call the Canaanite woman a dog?
That's the big question.
It is a tough question.
It is.
But as we kind of dig a little deeper, I think we'll find that the answer is both kind of surprising and inspiring.
Yeah, I think so too.
So to really understand what's going on here, we need to understand a little bit about the time and culture that Jesus lived in.
Context.
What was going on back then that might help us understand this story better?
Well, during Jesus' time, there was this very strict social and religious divide between the Jewish people and everyone else they called Gentiles.
So it wasn't just about different religions. It was a whole cultural separation.
Exactly. Yeah. And there was this powerful group of Jewish religious leaders called the Pharisees. And they were really influential in maintaining this separation.
I see.
They believed in strict observance of Jewish law and rituals, and they saw Gentiles as outsiders. You know?
Okay, so how did this affect
Yeah.
how the Jewish people viewed Gentiles, especially the Canaanites?
Right. Well, the Canaanites specifically had a long history of conflict with the Israelites.
Yeah.
You can read about that in the Old Testament.
Right.
So they were seen not just as outsiders, but as ancient enemies.
Wow, so that's a lot of baggage
Oh, yeah.
to bring into an encounter with Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now imagine you're this Canaanite woman desperate for your daughter's healing, and you hear that a Jewish teacher named Jesus is known for performing miracles.
Okay.
What do you do?
I mean, you swallow your pride and you seek him out,
Exactly.
hoping that he'll have compassion on you
Yeah.
despite that cultural divide.
That's exactly what this woman does.
Okay.
She finds Jesus, and she pleads with him to heal her daughter.
Uh-huh.
But his initial response is shocking.
Yeah.
He seems to ignore her, and then he says, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs."
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Did Jesus really just call her a dog?
It sounds harsh, doesn't it?
That sounds so harsh.
It does, and that's why it's so important to remember the historical context.
Okay.
Back then, the word dog was often used as a derogatory term for Gentiles.
Really?
Yeah, it implied uncleanliness and being outside of God's favor.
So is that it then?
What do you mean?
Is that why Jesus called the Canaanite woman a dog? Because she was a Gentile and that's just how people talked?
I mean, it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
You know, Jesus was a master teacher, and he often used the language and ideas of his time to challenge people's assumptions, to lead them to a deeper understanding.
So how does this play out in his interaction with the Canaanite woman?
Right, and that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So you see Jesus, by using the language of the Pharisees, remember, they're the ones who emphasize the separation between Jews and Gentiles. By using their language, it seems like he's acknowledging their viewpoint. He's speaking within their framework.
So he's not necessarily endorsing their prejudice, but
Yes.
he's meeting them where they are.
Exactly.
Right.
And what's even more fascinating is that there's this subtle shift in his language.
Okay.
The word he uses for dog actually refers to a small dog or a pet dog,
Okay.
bringing the imagery into a more domestic setting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you think he did that?
Well, it could be to make a point through contrast. You know,
Okay.
by using a word that evokes a sense of familiarity and even affection, he's setting the stage for this powerful metaphor. He's essentially saying that taking his attention away from the Jewish people would be like a father taking food meant for his children and giving it to the household pets.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a vivid image.
it is.
But even if it's a metaphor,
Yeah.
it still doesn't answer our big question, right?
Wow.
Why did Jesus call the Canaanite woman a dog?
That's the question that drives this whole story.
Right.
And we'll get there.
Okay.
But to understand the answer, we need to look at what happens next.
Okay.
At how the Canaanite woman responds to this seemingly harsh statement. And trust me, her response is absolutely incredible.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah. So we were talking about how Jesus used that metaphor of the children's bread and the household pets.
Right.
And it left us kind of wondering, like, why?
Why would he even go there?
Yeah, it is a puzzling moment.
It really is.
But I mentioned that the Canaanite woman's response is
Right.
what makes this story so remarkable.
What does she say?
Well, instead of being offended or backing down, she kind of takes Jesus' metaphor and turns it right back on him.
Oh, wow.
She replies, "Yes, Lord.
Yeah.
Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table."
Wow. She doesn't miss a beat.
I know, right?
She's not letting him off the hook.
She's not.
No.
She's incredibly quick-witted.
Yeah.
Not only does she understand the metaphor, but she uses it to make a really powerful point. She's acknowledging that, yes, the Jewish people are like the children at the table, but she's saying that even the dogs, even those considered outsiders,
Right.
deserve at least the scraps of God's grace.
So she's not just asking for her daughter to be healed.
No.
She's challenging this whole idea of who deserves God's blessings.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
She's going beyond her personal need and making a bold statement about inclusion, about God's love extending beyond the boundaries that people had created.
That's pretty audacious, especially considering the social climate at the time.
It is.
How does Jesus respond to her boldness?
Well, he's blown away by
Right.
her faith and her understanding.
Okay.
And he says to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted."
So he heals her daughter.
He does. And it's important to note that he doesn't just grant her request, like begrudgingly.
Right.
He praises her faith.
Yeah.
He recognizes that her persistence and her willingness to challenge him have come from a place of deep faith and understanding.
So this encounter isn't just about a physical healing.
No.
It's about Jesus being moved by the Canaanite woman's faith
Yes.
and recognizing the truth in her words.
Exactly. And this is where we start to see a deeper answer to our question.
Right.
Why did Jesus call the Canaanite woman a dog?
Okay.
It seems like he used that language, that seemingly harsh metaphor, to draw out her faith, to make her articulate the truth that God's love is bigger than any human-made boundaries.
So by seemingly agreeing with Pharisees' viewpoint,
Right.
he created a space for the Canaanite woman to challenge it,
Yeah.
reveal the expansiveness of God's grace.
That's a really insightful way to put it.
Yeah.
He used their limited framework to break it open
Yeah.
and to show that God's love is available to everyone, not just a select few.
This is really making me think about how God often works in unexpected ways.
It does.
Using even difficult or seemingly negative situations to bring about something beautiful.
Absolutely. And this story isn't just a historical anecdote.
Right.
It has implications for us today as believers.
How so?
Well, think about it. How often do we put people in boxes, making assumptions based on their background,
Right.
their culture, their beliefs? How often do we limit God's love by trying to define who's in and who's out?
You're right. We do that all the time, even without realizing it.
We do.
Yeah.
And that's why the story of the Canaanite woman is so powerful.
Okay.
It reminds us that God's grace is bigger than our limited human categories.
Yeah.
That God's love is available to everyone, regardless of background or past.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And it brings us back to the question we started with.
Right.
Why did Jesus call the Canaanite woman a dog?
We've explored the historical context, the language, the metaphor, and the woman's incredible response.
Yeah.
We've seen how Jesus used this encounter to challenge the assumptions of his disciples and reveal the expansiveness of God's love.
But I think there's still more to unpack here.
Okay.
We've talked about the context, the impact of the story.
Yeah.
But what about the Canaanite woman herself? What could we learn from her faith?
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how she just turns what could have been a moment of defeat into this moment of triumph.
Yeah.
She doesn't let pride or fear stop her from seeking Jesus.
Right.
And boldly advocating for her daughter.
And that boldness, that unwavering faith is what ultimately moves Jesus.
Right.
She recognizes his authority, calling him Lord.
Yeah.
But she also challenges him, refusing to accept a simple no for an answer.
It's almost like she's saying, I know you have the power to heal my daughter.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let you off the hook until you do.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
She's tenacious, and her persistence just reveals the depth of her faith.
Right.
She believes that even the crumbs from the master's table, even a small portion of God's grace, is enough to bring healing and wholeness.
And that kind of faith.
Yeah.
That willingness to humble yourself, but yet still stand firm in your belief.
Right.
That's what Jesus seems to be looking for.
Exactly. It's not about knowing all the right answers or having a perfect understanding of theology.
Right.
It's about having a heart that's open to God's love and a willingness to keep seeking him even when things are difficult.
So going back to our big question, Why did Jesus call the Canaanite woman a dog?
Hmm.
It seems like it was all part of this divine dance,
Yeah.
a way of revealing her faith and pushing her to articulate a truth that would change the course of history.
That's a beautiful way to describe it, and I think it's important to remember that the story isn't just about the Canaanite woman.
Right.
It's about Jesus revealing his mission,
Mhm.
his heart for all people, not just a select few.
It's about breaking down barriers and expanding our understanding of God's love.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that sometimes the people we least expect
Yeah.
can teach us the most profound lessons about faith.
You know, this encounter foreshadows the inclusion of Gentiles into the Christian faith.
Right.
It's a pivotal moment that shows how God's love is breaking down walls and extending grace to everyone.
This seemingly small encounter
Yeah.
has ripple effects that change everything.
I know.
It's like a seed being planted that will grow into a mighty tree.
And it challenges us to examine our own hearts.
Yeah.
Are we willing to be like the Canaanite woman, to approach Jesus with humility and boldness, to trust in his grace, even when we don't fully understand his ways?
It's a challenge to let go of our preconceived notions and open ourselves to the possibility that God's love might show up in unexpected ways
Right.
and through unexpected people.
And to never underestimate the power of persistent faith.
Yeah.
Even a crumb of God's grace can transform a life and change the world.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this incredible story,
Yeah.
let's keep that question echoing in our hearts. Why did Jesus call the Canaanite woman a dog?
Right.
And let the answer continue to shape our understanding of God's love, our faith, and our interactions with those around us.
May we all have the courage and the faith of the Canaanite woman
Yes.
to seek Jesus persistently, to challenge our assumptions, and to embrace the boundless love that he offers to each and every one of us.